Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I'm gonna give people a few minutes to hop on before we get started. But Elliot and Joe, thanks for coming back for a second round.
Glad to be here.
Hey, um, Hi everyone. We'll give people a couple minutes to jump on and then we'll get started. Hi Kelly, thanks for joining, for giving folks really another minute or two. Okay, I'm gonna say we have a critical mass. So thank you all for being here. My name is Alex Baca. I'm the DC Policy Director at Greater Washington. I see some familiar names from when we sort of kicked off this series of information sessions at the beginning of May. Thanks for spending another evening with us. I'm here with Christine Mayer from the Vision Zero office. It's in Des Moines now. And we can talk a little bit more about what that location means. But the purpose of this is to talk in a little bit more detail about specific road safety interventions that DDOT makes, that the executive makes, and help people better understand why things are done the way that they are. We can't answer every single question, but we can do our best. Christine's here on behalf of the district. I'm here as an advocate. So we will go through the presentation. Some of this will be old news for you. Some of this will hopefully be new and interesting to those of us, or those of you who are just joining us. And then we'll save some time for questions and wrap up around 7:30. We have hosted these series as a part of a grant funded process, which has been pretty cool, from Mobility Fund, which has enabled my time to just keep things organized. I don't know if and when we'll be able to do something like this again. We have recorded the sessions. We're recording this tonight so that you can look back at them. The word sessions are fairly similar, save for the sort of discussions about more specific projects, although these are intended to be more broadly about sort of like the policy and the choices that go into things rather than resolving specific issues on specific projects, since that's not really the staffing that we have at these meetings, although we can do our best. But I hope that we're able to do a little bit more of this going forward. I know that for me, these sessions have been really valuable. I've been working in this field for over a decade, and some of the information that we presented here has taken me almost a decade to learn. So I'm glad that we've been able to work together with the district on this. And I'm going to turn it over to Christine. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Good evening, everyone. Go ahead and share my screen. All right. And if you have questions as we're going, feel free to stop me. And I'm just working off of one screen, my laptop, so I can't see hands up. But if Alex, you can help me sort of realize when someone's trying to ask a question, that'd be great.
Feel free to put stuff in, elevate that.
Yeah. Okay, so how we've been structuring these is our first session, we mentioned budget info. We didn't get into that, so I'll go over that quickly at like a high level. We'll talk about ward data, ward projects that are going on, and then my colleague who's on, Kelly Jung Olson from DDOT, will talk about who your points of contact are and how to reach out to the district and different agencies. So first, there's two pieces to the budget. There's the capital budget. Think of this like buying your house. These are sort of fixed infrastructure or materials or things that we buy or do that are sort of one-time things. So buying your house, that's kind of a one-time purchase normally. So this is like paying for our buildings, our schools, our government offices, our land and infrastructure that we have, including parks and roads and bridges. Underneath that's where DDOT capital projects sort of lives. And then others are kind of fleet, IT, computer systems, servers, telecoms, other things that sort of we put out and has a usable life and move forward with. Those are funded over a 6-year capital improvement plan. And we use those funds to purchase and implement those facilities or infrastructure, what have you. Then there's the operating budget. So if capital is buying your house, operating is paying your light bill or your water bill or what have you. So these are funding the services to keep the government running. So this is government employee salaries, public services like education, public safety, DDOT programs usually get their funding under this operating budget. So if it's a program, it's got this operating funding usually that's at least covering staff and sort of keeping the projects going. And then there's the capital funding, and that's to build the infrastructure. So an example here for DC Public Schools, the agency that gets the operating funding, it goes to public schools direct services, to the activity at Langdon Elementary, and to the service that they provide there as special education. In terms of budget process and schedule, we're sort of in the midst of budget season. There was a hearing just yesterday on the budget. So we're about here, May, June, budget votes and amendments and things going on. There will be votes from council on the budget to send it to the mayor, and then the mayor can approve it or send it back for more revisions and things. But at the very beginning of this process, sort of starts during the summertime, July, August. That's when agencies, DDOT, for instance, begins budget formulation. We look at project and program funding requests, anything new that needs to be added to the budget, either operating or capital requests. And then that goes through internal processes of each project gets an equity score. Then they get prioritized based on that. We look at budget outlooks and things. Then the new fiscal year begins October 1st into the fall. That's when the mayor and the chief financial officer begin sort of developing the operating budgets for the next year. Council passes that budget submission resolution. Then we move into the hearing season. That's where we'll have the oversight hearings for different agencies, including DDOT, DMWA, and others. And then the mayor will submit the new fiscal year budget around March, middle March. Then council will hold budget hearings. And then that sort of brings us full circle here. So we'll go into Ward 5 data. So I pulled some data. This is all on our public dashboards that we have. So The main repository for most of our safety data and information is visionzero.dc.gov. That's our entire platform. We've got different tabs at the top. One is for the update that we released last fall. Our high injury network is within that. And then our safety intervention dashboard. You can go to that and see what different safety tools do what jobs. And we tried to explain that in as simple terms as possible that people could relate to, whether you know a lot about transportation or are very new to this. And so we've got some of the treatments noted here, but the main thing is we keep updated injury and fatality data on this public dashboard, and we try and keep it as up to date as possible. So if a new fatality or critical injury or other comes in, we're trying to get that as live updated as possible on our dashboard. This is what our dashboard looks like. It's under the this thing is blocking the crash analysis tab. You can filter. This is a really useful tool. You can filter by severity, by mode that the person was traveling, the dates. This goes back to, I think, 2015 or 2014, and is as up to date as I think yesterday. Then you can filter by your ward and even down to your ANC. And so these are the tabs that we have at the top. Within the dashboard, you can see, so after a fatal crash happens, we work with MPD to review the crash site and try and figure out what safety treatments we can add to that location, or if it's part of a project, what additional safety features we can add. All of that's in the fatality details tab. So you can see just fatality details and how the district, specifically DDOT, responded to that. So looking at trends over time. So fatalities vary by year in terms of their location. The risk is, we know risky situations and risky conditions on the street are sort of always there until we change the design. However, where the actual fatality occurs is somewhat random year to year. So typically most fatalities happen, as you can see in this graph, in wards 2, 5, 7, and 8, with wards 7 and 8 kind of bearing the brunt of most of the traffic violence that we see on our streets. And that continues to be a trend across years. Major injuries by ward, similar outlook. Wards 5, 7, and 8 also see most of the major injuries. We are seeing a downward trend, but of course not as downward as we'd like. We'd like to be at 0, of course, but it's ongoing challenge. MPD did change the definition of what a major injury is, which might be why we've seen a sort of big jump from the previous year to this year, or this past year. So we're still sort of waiting to see how that plays out. But regardless, thankfully seeing a downward trend, not as steep of a slope as we'd like. By mode, we see a lot of pedestrian fatalities and motor vehicle occupants. And then variable by year is fatalities of people biking. So generally, a lot of people walking, biking, driving on the various streets in Ward 5. We see a lot more motor vehicle crashes on streets like New York Avenue, Benning, Florida, Rhode Island, things like that. Major injuries. Most of the major injuries we see are motor vehicle occupants and motorcyclists in Ward 5. And then, of course, a good percentage of that is pedestrians as well. Bicyclists, as our facilities grow in Ward 5, are also represented in major injuries as well. So our high injury network we formed after looking at previous 5 years of data, seeing where the most crash dense and severe segments of our streets were across DC. So tier 1 are our highest district-wide priorities in terms of safety projects and safety streets that we need to look at further and redesign those streets. Focus other efforts as well. Tier 2 are supplemental to that ward. So for Ward 5, Rhode Island Avenue and Bladensburg, also injury dense streets that also need a lot of work in terms of safety on them. But in Ward 5, we've got North Capitol Street, Benning Road, New York Avenue, Florida, Rhode Island Avenue, Bladensburg, and New Jersey Avenue. And a lot of these are border streets, as you know. In terms of projects, so in the first session, we kind of went over this, how a project becomes infrastructure. So a lot of times we'll look at a hotspot, like a spot intersection or single intersection or segment, look at that for different treatments. If that's coming up, we have a program called a Highway Safety Improvement Program, where we just look at injury, crash rates, severity, and frequency at specific locations. So we do targeted treatments for those crash types and follow kind of the guidelines that the federal government and research has shown to be effective against those crash types. If things still aren't working, we'll go into corridor quick build. So we'll look at a larger segment of the corridor, phase in quick build or quick delivery treatments that are like the paint and post, kind of like we did on Florida Avenue Northeast, phase in improvements to see the safety improvements and the safety benefits before a bigger capital project comes on. And then sort of the end of this line is streetscape capital project. That's where we're taking everything that's paint and post and making that into permanent granite, brick, concrete, asphalt, curbs, and things like that. So you're less likely to see paint and post in those, and those should be kind of finished products. So all along this, there's kind of a long-term plan and vision. Alabama Avenue is a good example of that, where we started with sort of spot treatments and then have gone through and done a number of treatments on that street and are planning a longer-term project. So project process for quick delivery projects is about 2 to 5 years this is like a corridor project, quick build. So for planning, we look at existing conditions. We look at different concepts for how the street or intersections could look. We analyze those concepts. What kind of safety benefits do they have? What are the trade-offs? What are the needs in certain areas? We look at preliminary engineering. So where do we need to accommodate drainage or regrade a sidewalk or things like that? And then during that process is when we have the most community outreach and ANC engagement. Then we go into the environmental portion. This is usually done internally. We have an environmental team. That's where we're documenting the expected impacts, whether that's traffic impacts or otherwise. We design and implement into that concept mitigation measures, and then work together in-house to then turn that into a design where we actually have survey of the street, which is where you see the people with the tripods taking pictures of the road. They're actually measuring the street curb to curb, documenting what's there, so we can base our design and construction plans on that. We go through rounds of review with different disciplines across the agency for these design plans. We get to 100%, which means they're finished, ready for construction. And then we'll issue an NOI or a notice of intent to the ANC. Kelly will talk about that in detail a little bit later. And then we go into construction. Sometimes we need to phase in treatments, like we need to build the curb ramps before we can mark the crosswalk, different things like that. There's weather considerations for this, so it may be delayed because we get like a full week of rain. There are times where we just can't do work on the project and further it because of different things that happen. We'll get to substantial completion. That's where pretty much everything on the plans is done and in place. Well, usually the project manager will walk the site with the contractor and have a final punch list. It's like a to-do list. Oh, you forgot this sign, do this, and then close out the project. Typically, in terms of procurement or buying things and getting contractor help on different phases of these, we have existing contracts that we can use, that we renew every so often, that can cover most of the work here. So that helps expedite the process. Then the larger capital projects, I think I went over most of this in the first round, so I won't repeat the total thing, but this is a much longer process. So this is where you have, this is like a K Street Transit Way, where we've got 1 to 3 years of planning and study, and then procurement for that. Then there's environmental impact statement or environmental investigation. That's a much lengthier process of documenting what the expected issues are. That's when historic preservation and things like that come into play. Then there's design, doing even more design, because it involves a lot of civil engineering and utility work and sort of under the street work. Then that gets us to 100% design plans, which is different than the construction plans for these, because they're more intense for the capital projects. So for a capital project, we need the in-between phases right of way, where we're purchasing or preparing the right of way, which is the public space that we have for streets. We're preparing that space for the construction project. So if that involves buying more land, like in the case of Shepherd Branch Trail, or we need to move someone's fence or wall out of the public right of way so we can build the project as designed or as planned, then that's sort of the process to do that. Then there's plans, specifications, and estimates. Those are like the tabulations of how much of each type of material we need to get it to a good estimate for how much it's going to take to construct. And then that's construction, and a similar process of phasing those in. For DDEP projects, they're sort of broken up into different buckets, I'll say. There's proactive, which is what you see in Move DC. These are citywide programs. For Vision Zero, our annual safety program, making sure that we've got projects going on our high injury network. We have mode focus programs, so our transit priority, our bus priority plan, and projects that are moving across the district, protected bike lanes, and then bringing things up to citywide standards and practices. So anytime we repave a street, we update the markings, upgrade the crosswalks, things like that. Then there's localized plans or programs. These are safety and mobility studies. That's for kind of like a neighborhood area, or safe routes to schools, which is the area around a school. We look do walk audits and do safety treatments around the school. And then there's infrastructure projects that are planned as part of Move DC. So those could be corridor-wide projects, kind of like C Street or Dave Thomas Circle, things like that. They could be either corridor-wide or intersection-based. Then there's maintenance. So those infrastructure projects that are replacing a bridge that's in disrepair, doing street reconstruction, things like moving bus pads along a street. Those are concrete. We need to sort of reset those in the asphalt. Sidewalk maintenance as well, and extending the sidewalks. Then there's asset management. That's our paving plan. Refreshing our tactical installations, like our curb extensions that are paint and post, replacing the flex posts, especially after damage. Then there's responsive, which are spot treatments, like our post-fatal crash interventions, looking at those locations for safety treatments. There's requests, council requests that are put in our budget. There's traffic safety inputs that we work on, and then maintenance requests that we get from folks. So someone asked us to explain what are complete streets. So complete streets are streets that move people by accommodating all modes of travel safely, comfortably, and conveniently in interconnected networks. These give people options of ways to travel. So complete streets are kind of vision zero in action. They include sidewalks, ramps, level paved places for people to wait for the bus, medians and median refuge islands, curb extensions, bus bulbs, bus lanes. There's markings on the pavement like crosswalks, yield markings, stop lines, etc., bicycle lanes, signs to warn people of people crossing the street, flashing beacons for crosswalks, and then signals and signal timing for pedestrians, hawk signals, and more. So common safety treatments that you'll see that we use across the district. First, how do we determine what goes there? So part of it, the first part is determining the problem. So we look at data that we have or collect more data in terms of number two, where we may not have data. We listen to the residents that deal with the issue every day, hear concerns, and try to determine the root of the issue. Collect more data if we need to, whether that's street imagery, speed data, geometry, if we need to kind of go out and measure things to make sure that we have the space that we think we have, we'll do that. Analyze the context, so look at what's surrounding that location, whether it's really residential, what's the street type, what kind of buildings are around it, and what's existing on the street. And then, given all that information, recommend and apply engineering best practices. So take all of that into account and try and recommend the things that we think will help the most. And we don't just sort of come up with this stuff. This is based on guidance from federal, state, and often localized or specialized guidance. I went through a lot of these in the first round, so I won't go over them in detail. But these are our guiding documents, and they each kind of complement and supplement one another. So the first thing is vertical deflection. This is the term you'll hear engineers use to talk about speed humps, speed tables, raised crosswalks. These are things that people have to slow down and go over when they're driving. So these force people to slow down as they're going over them. Next one is horizontal. So same idea, but slows people down as they go around it. So things like median refuge islands, curb extensions, bulb outs, left turn traffic calming, mini roundabouts like the picture here, things like that. Even on-street parking can sometimes have this effect as well. Access management and operational changes. So restrictions or reconfigurations to the way that the street is accessed or operates. So we'll look at things like restricting turns. Council passed no turn on red across the district by 2025. So we've been working to expand no turn on red across the district with each project that we have in advance of that. Centerline hardening, median barriers, different things like that, just to make sure people aren't making unsafe, uncontrolled turns where they may not need to, or it's unsafe to do so. Visibility enhancements. So these are safety treatments that improve visibility. They let drivers know that someone is waiting to cross or about to cross. So you see rectangular rapid flashing beacons here. We've got pedestrian flashing signs as well, the diamond ones with the little lights along the edge. In the middle here is a hawk signal. Those are pedestrian activated. So if you want to cross, you push the button and it will stop traffic for you. It's a mandated stoplight. So drivers are required to stop for it on red, and then like a pedestrian signal or any other traffic signal, you can cross when you have the sort of white walker person. Then there's just signage to help drivers be more aware that people are crossing. So signs. These are signs that communicate the rules of the road and expectations for all road users. So speed limit signs are a great example of that. When we did 20 is plenty, rolling those out. These pedestrian paddle signs that you see in the middle help communicate the law that drivers have to stop for people in the crosswalk. And then things like left lane must turn left, or right lane must turn right signs. They just help people understand what the expectations are for their behavior. Similar to that is pavement markings, obviously painted lines on the street that guide different street users on how they should use the street. So bike lane markings, a good example, on-street parking boxes, shared lane markings. These can also help visually narrow the street. That way, you don't feel like you have such a wide open space. People are less likely to speed when they feel like they've got less navigation space. And then finally, then intersection treatments. So safety treatments at intersections. So we can add traffic controls if they're warranted, like stop signs or signals. We can make geometrical changes at intersections, considering like roundabouts or traffic circles where they can fit. No turn on red restrictions, lots of different changes that we can make at intersections to make them safer. Signal changes, so different things like adding a bike signal where we've got a trail crossing, making sure that we've got arrow signals that direct drivers to the directions they need to go and give them better guidance. We do things like signal backplates to make our signals more visible to drivers, since we don't have the big mast arms like a lot of our neighbors. Pedestrian signal phases, leading pedestrian intervals, things like that. Then there's automated enforcement. So these are our red light cameras, speed cameras, stop sign cameras, and bus lane cameras for bus lane enforcement that's coming soon. We roll those out across the district, and they have a safety benefit wherever we do roll them out. We do rotate these sometimes and supplement with driver feedback signs a lot of times, so that people know before they get up to the camera if they're speeding or exceeding the speed limit. Safe routes to school safety treatments. So pretty much everything that you've already seen, plus more signs. And then we'll add crossing guards or traffic control officers, like my colleague you see here in the picture, to help children and families cross the street safely to get to school. Work with schools to set up pickup and drop off plans and circulation. And then last year, I co-led the Safe School Streets pilot that we did across the district at one school in each ward. So slowly rolling out more innovative, or as much as we can, school safety treatments. So again, how do we determine what goes where? Context is really key. Not every safety treatment is appropriate or feasible for every street or intersection type. We look at nearby facilities, schools, or kind of the neighborhood context to determine what's best in each place. And the street type, land uses, we consult MoveDC, we look at the crash history, we look at the risky conditions that we know that lead to serious injury and fatality whenever we're looking at these locations. So a few key programs I wanted to mention. This is our annual safety program. This is where we look at at least 100 locations across the district and do quick delivery safety treatments wherever we can. So this is a combination of about 25 to 35 high injury intersections. That's the ones that we look at the specific crash types and implement the countermeasures or safety treatments that we know are typically used to help with those types of crashes. We look at our old livability studies or past livability studies and try and implement the recommendations that have gone through a public process already. In those, we'll try and do 1 to 2 corridor safety projects that are high priority. So right now I'm working on Southern Avenue between Pennsylvania and Benning, and also Good Hope Road between Minnesota and Alabama. Pedestrian crossing improvements, like crossing signs or raised crosswalks, things like that. Speed feedback signs, and then we will do speed limit assessments where we have speed limits that are higher than 25 across our streets to see if we can lower them as a first step towards improving safety. Then we've got medium to mega projects. These are larger corridor level capital type projects that look at things on a longer segment. We've got capital projects. There's a whole page dedicated to capital projects, and you can click on each one of these and get more information about what's going on with it. This is the map for Ward 5. Excuse me, and each one of these, I believe most of these are paving segments, the green and red. But the blue ones are the bigger projects. Those are the ones that sort of correspond to these different ones. So Crosstown Multimodal Study, I worked on that as a consultant, and I remember the location. So this is, that's what this kind of blue line is here. We've got Ward 5 bus priority projects going on. So Florida Avenue, Northwest, Northeast. We just did a road safety audit walk as part of this project, and we're going to implement as many safety treatments as we can through this bus project. Benning Road, streetcar, and reconstruction. Another one where I'm working with that project team to try and get further safety treatments as well. Then there's bike projects that are upcoming. So there's a piece of Riggs Road, Rock Creek Church Road, Harewood, Taylor, Florida Ave Northeast. That one's under construction to extend through Dave Thomas Circle. At least there's the portion that's under construction, and then the one that will be under construction with Dave Thomas Circle to extend the bike lanes there. A piece of Monroe Street, 8th Street Northeast, Mount Olivet, and 17th Street Northeast in Ward 5 specifically. Then we have a dashboard that shows completed interventions. So any kind of safety treatments that we've done over the past, say, 5 years or so are included in this dashboard. So the layer you see here is our leading pedestrian intervals at all of our signalized intersections. So we've got about 90% coverage of all of our signalized intersections, but working to expand that even further to get as close to 100 as we can. Left turn traffic calming, there's all of these layers here that you can sort of turn off and on to see where we've already done things. Then I'll pass it off to my colleague Kelly, and she'll talk through who you can reach out to.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Jung Olsen, Community Engagement Manager. I do see a few community commissioners, Commissioner Lewis, Commissioner Hart, and thank you for joining, and other community stakeholders, thanks again for joining us. So I'll be talking about who community stakeholder, community members can reach out to. So I'm going to talk about ANC and DDOT, our community engagement team, and also MOCRS, the mayor's community engagement team. And yeah, next slide. So first of all, we always recommend or encourage residents to reach out their ANC, because some residents who reach out to the DDOT for certain issues, sometimes they don't even know what ANC is, who their ANC commissioner is. So we always, try to include our ANC commissioners in our any response so that she or he is aware of resident concerns. So, ANC, you can find information from anc.dc.gov. There's a search function. So basically, ANC is Advisory Neighborhood Commission. The commissioners, they are representing, certain area called single member district. which is kind of a small area. So they are the officially elected officials and who represent the area and who knows the area the most. And, they are representing the voice of the area. So that's why we, DDOT, are working closely with them to get their feedback and provide notification on any changes in their area. So again, you can search ANC through ANC.dc.gov, and also on that website, you can see entire list of ANC commissioners per ward. So each, the filter has, word from ward 1 to ward 8. You will see the ANC commissioners' name and information, and also the area they're representing, and also their meeting information. So usually ANCs, they are meeting monthly, except for some summer months during their recess. So they meet monthly, including a public audience, and they are passing resolutions and sending their letters to DC government agencies, including DDOT, for asking for actions or sharing their recommendations. So this is my team, community engagement teams. As you know, DDOT, community engagement team started very small. So we only had a few folks, but now we grew. So now we have one community engagement specialist per ward. So as you may already know, Delando Baker is our community engagement specialist, and he's been with DDOT in this position over almost 2 years. And he's great, and he's attending ANC meetings, and as well as, he's meeting with the residents on site in the field to talk about their DDOT concern as well. So you can find the full list from our website, community engagement, under DDOT website, and you will see full name and our contact information. Also, as you can imagine, residents reach out to my team for sometimes non-DDOT issues. Sometimes, issues that are quite complex that DDOT cannot just address by ourselves. And we always connect them with MOCRS, Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services. So also MOCRS, they have like 2 or 3 representatives per ward. So for Ward 5, we have Anthony and Chris. So they are mayor's liaisons. So they are also helping residents to connect city services, not just DDOT. So they're also bringing DDOT issues to our attention so that we can work on it. So we have very good working relations. So how we work with ANCs, as I briefly mentioned, we are working very closely with ANCs for many reasons. So they are official voice of the neighborhood. So we want to make sure that ANC commissioners is aware of what's happening in the area. And because the main reason is because it's impossible, realistically impossible, to reach out to every single person to notifying some changes. That's why we are working closely with ANC commissioners so that we can ask for their opinion and feedback first, and also they can work with their constituent and through ANC meetings or through their outreach to get consolidated feedback about any changes DDOT is presenting. So when we issue NOI, notice of intent, ANC often send us resolution letter, but to send their official feedback about our changes or notice of intent or any project. And required by law, DDOT is required to review and consider their feedback and comments with great weight and provide a detailed response on our final decision. Whether it's something we can accommodate, whether it's something we cannot accommodate, we are required by law to provide explanation on why. So again, DC 311, this website, and also you can call 311 just from your phone. So this is city call center. So of course, DDOT offers lots of services through 311. So this is really important for us. So when we work with residents, they often reach out to us with issues, which is great. However, we always recommend them to submit 311 requests first. That way we can look into the details in our system directly, because usually when you submit 311, you can submit photos and details, and then we have a tracking mechanism like internally for DDOT services under 311. So it's always recommended so that we can provide detailed updates instead of following just through emails. So for example, like traffic signal is out, that's one of the very popular ones. You can call 311. So those kind of traffic signal maintenance issues, our response time is within like few hours, to be honest. For like flashing red light, there's something wrong with the traffic light, our response time is very quick. And when the sign is down, that's also something you can request through 311. And yeah, our response time is sometimes quite depending on what kind of sign, because sometimes you have to like fabricate the sign again. But however, if it's for like stop sign, our response time is 5 days. You can always also for like community engagement team so that we can go out and address as soon as possible. Yeah, these are the list of DDoS services, and also you see other services provided by other agencies. You can basically under how can we help that function, you can search your need services. You can search for LE, then you will see LE cleaning, which is for DPW. You can also find LE repair, which is under DDoS. So also I want to briefly talk about our TSI 2.0. So as you know, traffic safety assessment previously was a very popular program where a resident can request their safety concern. But now, as of January of this year, we upgraded this program. Now it's called Traffic Safety Input. We call TSI. So we have this, as you can see, public facing dashboard where you can see where we already have existing requests, which locations we are investigating this quarter, which location has pending safety installation, which location has been completed, and you can use all this filter. Also, you can use filters for Ward, ANC, and your SMD for ANC commissioners to see what's currently being considered and currently under investigation for your area. Yeah, I went through very quickly, but I'm open to any questions.
So it sort of concludes our presentation. I know we have some like 311 super users on here, so for some of you, this may not be the most new piece of information in the world, but I always recommend that people file 311 requests, even if they think that it doesn't need to be a 311 request or it should be an email. I know personally I use them to track things and remind my own ANC and my own council member as to things I filed. But yeah, that kind of wraps up our presentations. So we have, about 40 minutes left, and that's plenty of time for questions if anybody has them. So feel free to share them with the class.
No question means our presentation was perfect.
Everything is perfect. Everyone's totally happy with DDOT, and we're gonna go enjoy the beautiful weather.
Yeah, I can put my contact information on the chat so that you have it. I mean, I'm sure many of you already have it, but I really want to highlight that we have community specialists because DDOT is 1,200 employee agency. It's huge. So we mainly discuss safety project and initiative programs today, but we also offer lots of services including paving, repairs, like a lot of services like traffic control officer or things like that. So like trees also under DDOT, street trees and street lights. So yeah, I mean, that's why people feel like, who should I reach out to? Like, who should I reach out under DDOT? Because which team does what, right? So we are community engagement team. We are the gatekeepers. So reach out to us. We'll connect you with the right person, and we'll get you information from them. So you don't have to like go through multiple steps.
Yeah, I think the size of DDOT is sometimes hard to comprehend. So, I bike in DC, I want more bike lanes. So I think primarily of the bike team, but that's certainly not the full scope of the agency. Great, thanks Brian for your question about TSIs. The requests are going through a score system, correct? If so, can you explain how that works a little more?
Oh, you're on mute, Kelly. Do you want to? Yeah, you can go.
Yes, I mean, I can share the link. So the quick answer is yes. So we are going through the scoring system. Then how we can score is based on our the modeling process, and we have a very detailed 2-pager on our website I can share. So basically all objective like safety factors, including of course crash data, patterns, and the road classification and proximity to schools or any vulnerable roadway users and equity. So yeah, let me share that on the chat.
And maybe Christine, you can talk a little bit more about how you all got to both like using a scoring system instead of the various other, because just for the sake of background information of everyone on the call, this is kind of the multiple iteration of how to do TSI. So some history on that and then how you got to this point would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So so I previously worked in the city of Alexandria, and part of the issue that we were dealing with, I was a 2-person staff. It was myself, my staff member, and then sometimes I had an intern if I was lucky. So we would get hundreds and hundreds of requests for complete streets and safety treatments that were new across Alexandria, and similar things were happening across the district, and we just couldn't find a way to equitably address all of those issues with the resources that we had, with the staff time that we had, without without completely kind of just focusing full time all on these requests, when we had a high injury network and a sort of data-driven process of figuring out where our highest priority intersections and locations are. So this is an effort to sort of balance that. So the same team that looks at TSIs also works on high priority data-driven safety stuff. So this is a way of trying to bring greater balance to that. And also just in our first like assessment, we used to, when we were just sort of first come, first serve, about 46% of requests got denied. But given the new process, I think we've had a total of 4 of the first 200 locations that didn't have something within the scope of the TSI program that we could do there. So that's also an effort to not only address the issue that the residents noting at this location, but also take a more holistic look at these locations. So if it's not just the parking sign, it's, looking at, is there daylighting that we could do, and come up with a more comprehensive safety solution at these locations.
And I should pull up the link to this. After the TSA process was changed a little bit, we did write about it on Greater Washington. We had a volunteer contributor write about it. And I was happy to get that up because like we are supportive of the new TSI process. I know that it has been not ideal for some commissioners, especially those who have put a lot of time into filing requests under the old system, and I totally understand that. At the same time, like I know from both my work on like housing also is that you can't always respond to the people who are making the most requests. We're all really high information, and while that's really important, that doesn't always capture like the full scope of stuff. So I personally was like really excited about that, even though I know that it was one of the more contentious processes to switch over, in part just because everyone had worked so hard under the previous system, and I do want to acknowledge that. For the sake of recording, anything else regarding updates on the Bladensburg Road projects that are necessary to share?
I'll just put that on the chat. So we are hosting our final public meeting in the next 2 weeks. I think it's on Saturday, 10 a.m. at Trinidad Rec Center. So also I'm going to share the link to the project website because their project website is really good. So you can actually look at the entire kind of concept design for the corridor, and you can put your comments for any section you are interested. So let me share that quickly.
And then I do want to make sure that we get to how do crashes that don't result in injury go into the assessments you make. Crash without an injury is just good luck that time around. Kelly's answer is in the chat, which I'm just going to read. We consider all crashes that are reported to MPD, including non-injury crashes. However, we do not consider mere misses that were not reported to MPD. I was hit by a driver a couple weeks ago. No one needs to apologize. I'm all good. Thank you. But I did learn in that process that if MPD doesn't show up, which they did not, you do need to go to the precinct to report the crash to make sure that you become a data point on the Vision Zero map. So I would like to, that is something that like I personally as an advocate would like to change the policy on if possible. But for now, that is how that works. So if that does happen to you, if it happens to anyone else and you want to make sure that that crash report has happened, you do need to go to the precinct where the crash occurred. So I can share that information with you now. Carly, you have your hand up. Let us know when you are able to get your microphone working. How are upgrades to existing safe streets infrastructure considered? How does the planning work for a bike lane to be upgraded to a protected bike lane? Good question.
Sorry, rereading that. Are upgrades to existing safe streets infrastructure considered? So there's a couple different ways. So our protected bike lane program, it's all part of our bike team. They will look at existing streets that have standard bike lanes on them, and determine if they have the space to remove parking or not remove parking and make them protected in different ways. Then there's the Vision Zero hardening program that council just funded last year of like $5 million a year, which in infrastructure dollars isn't a whole lot, but it's something to go on. That program, we're using kind of a feasibility analysis to determine what can we do in that $5 million budget, and what are the locations that are highest priority in terms of safety, crash risk, equity, different things like that, like proximity to a school or a metro station or things like that. So those are two programs that we use. Then there's our capital infrastructure program. Those are the streetscapes that usually are infrastructure project management administration. They're the civil engineers who will look at the sort of tactical things on the street or pre-existing concept, like in the case of K Street, and then bring that through civil design to a finished project. So those are a little bit different in how they get selected. The project requests go through that budget process I talked about, where they get scored and prioritized. But those are sort of three examples of programs that we do. Then as part of sort of quick build or quick delivery projects, we're trying more and more to roll out things in a permanent fashion as much as we can, just to have to skip that step of like then putting it through the feasibility assessment and prioritization, and then so on. So trying to do it sort of as much as we can the first time, but still keeping in mind the urgent need for those safety treatments as well.
Can you talk a little bit more about like how projects start at DDOT before they get to the budgeting phase, but like what teams they come out of, and like sort of, and that maybe going back to that org chart slide, but I think that's relevant here since different teams work on like different things. A protected bike lane may come from a different place than
Yes.
something else.
Yeah, so there's two main administrations that work on projects. So there's infrastructure project management. Those are the ones who take the concept from this project delivery administration. So that's sort of the civil engineers. They make the concepts sort of final. But the project delivery administration is broken up into a planning branch. These are long-term, there's a long-term planning team, which is led by Ed Stoloff. He's doing projects like Connecticut Avenue, Alabama Avenue, Bladensburg Road, North Capitol. They are looking at sort of feasibility, longer range projects, bigger scale, and that has a pipeline directly to the capital projects. We're trying to make it so there's an implement, like a interim phase where after his study concludes, we start building some of the safety treatments that we can that were sort of planned as part of the project for future phases. So that's a longer range. There's the bike team. They're focused on building out the bike network, making the connections that we have, expanding the network, getting it to places where people want to bike. Then there's the bus priority program. Through that, they're looking at improving bus service on different streets across DC, where bus service is currently suffering because of congestion or other issues. So in those cases, they're looking at the feasibility of dedicated bus lanes. Also, maybe it's just bus treatments and protected bike lanes like on Minnesota Avenue. So, and then there's my sort of corridor safety projects. And those are based on high safety priorities that aren't in somebody else's sort of near-term outlook for projects. And that's where we're focused on safety and trying to do as much as we can in terms of bike lanes or transit treatments or whatever we can on the street. And so all of us are working collaboratively on each of these projects. So I'll review the bus team's projects and the bike team's projects. And like in the case of Florida Avenue, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes we'll lead the safety walk for Florida Avenue to document the safety issues, and then all work together to sort of come up with a concept that meets all the needs. A lot of collaboration, but it ends up in a better product, hopefully.
Carla, I called on you. I'm sorry, I can't unmute you, but thank you for putting your question in the chat. Christine, are you able to read that?
Yeah, I'd like to know about the safety improvement in Florida Avenue and Quincy Place. DDOT would place a beacon there. However, residents are complaining about the beacon signals on 3rd in Florida and 2nd in Florida. Drivers don't respect it. Are these like the flashing beacon signs they're not following? If those are the ones that you're talking about, yes, okay. Yes, so part of this project is looking at what safety treatments we can put on the street and especially considering the bus service there. So we had a public meeting maybe last week, I think, where that was the first public meeting.
I'm
there you are.
unmuted now, so I don't know what happened, but it worked now.
Okay.
So thank you. Yes, so on 2nd Street Northwest, as well as 3rd Street and Florida Avenue Northwest, and especially 3rd Street and Northwest, because the beacon sign that's there is one of those sort of kind of like triangular ones, and it's a pedestrian activated
Yes. Yep.
signal. And during the day, it's a yellow flashing light, and you can't see it. You just can't see it, during the daylight. Yeah. And, I've had, there's a handicapped person that lives nearby, and there was a family with children, and they said every time we go across that street, we take our lives into our own hands. What can be done about this signal, because it's not working?
Yeah, and that's part of what we're looking at with the bus project, because we saw it when we were out there. I wasn't even sure if it was functioning correctly, so I put in a 311 for our signals folks to take a look.
Okay,
Um,
but the thing is here, you know, here it is. We have two of those signals on Florida Avenue, yet another one is being proposed on Florida Avenue in Quincy Place when people are not happy or satisfied with the two that are on Florida Avenue.
mhm.
I mean, Florida Avenue is it's a busy corridor, and something needs to be there. You know, I had requested halt signals in the past, and I want to know why it is they determine a beacon as opposed to a hawk signal.
So hawk signals, there is an official warrant in the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. That's our federal standard for determining when and where signals can go in, and other things related to that. But those signals, so yeah, we do have to study them. We do have to take counts for those. But the upgrade to all of those crosswalks is part of the effort on Florida Avenue. And so if we can do things like, let's say the project recommends bus lanes, dedicated bus lanes, then there are certain safety treatments that we can put in that will help with that. So we could consider hawk signals at those. They have to meet generally a standard, according to the MUTCD, of I think it's 20 pedestrians crossing in an hour, which I'm sure we've got, especially on weekends on Florida Avenue. So it's just something that for the federal government and for our funders, which often our funding is federal, we just have to have the documentation to say, yes, this meets these standards. And just kind of move on from there after, so we can install it. But we do have to make sure it meets certain standards to install those.
So there's a higher threshold for a hawk signal than there is for a
Yes.
beacon, basically.
Yes.
And what you
Yeah.
can do now is a beacon, but you need to have some proof and documentation for FHWA.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, a beacon is like not at all the ideal treatment for Florida, especially the 4-lane cross section that we have. But it is just a small thing to help make drivers aware. I know they don't respect it. I was out there and trying to cross myself. So beyond having MPD there with us and having them enforce a little bit more, we're trying to work on upgrading those crossings.
I think this leads nicely into Brian's question about how are trade-offs between safety infrastructure and managing traffic congestion and parking evaluated in decisions about what projects to pursue. Because Florida Avenue is also, like, there's a lot more going on Florida beyond the crossings that is going to change in the short to medium term future. I guess more like medium term.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's different in different areas. So like, yeah, unfortunately, like no two projects are the same when it comes to determining the trade-offs. What I try to do as the Vision Zero kind of design planning person is push our engineers and push our planners to really look at the crash patterns and the risky conditions that we have, and implement as many safety treatments as we can with all of these, even if that means degradation to a level of service or more delay at an intersection. For me, there is no trade-off. The safety is the most important thing if we can prevent one person from being hit. But it is moving an entire culture that has done things a certain way for decades since it was formed. I'm the little tugboat trying to like help my colleagues along. It's not just me, more people buy in, but yeah, it's a ongoing challenge, and I'm just trying to be in as many conversations and projects as we can to move safety forward in each of these. So if it's a high injury network street, I've got way more leverage, and our director's very focused, and our deputy mayor is very focused on projects on our high injury network to make sure that our highest priority safety locations are getting addressed, and that we're not making the trade-offs for congestion, that don't benefit safety.
Yeah, and I think for some like added context, right, like the bus priority program at DDOT was sort of one of the first programs that I had seen that had sort of taken a like metric, right? And like you can look at the bus priority program report, it's like 26 pages, Brian, I'm sure that you've looked at it. But like what was interesting to me about that was it was kind of the first time that I had seen, and like I've been working with like DDOT stuff since like the 2005 like bike master plan and like stuff like that, right? Where there was a like here we're going to look at the inputs to select the projects that are coming out with it, or like that we're coming out with, and starting to track those over time. And so that seems really simple and like basic project management stuff. That was why like Juju Wash has been super supportive of the bus priority program, because it's a good idea, but also because it sort of provides this template of setting up like, what are your metrics? Can you say what they are clearly, and can you show how the projects that you're picking to pursue line up with those? So now as those bus priority projects are moving forward, you can see the sort of like plans for them reflect the like priorities that are in the report, which is not something that we've had, especially like I feel like, you know, publicly as in the past. And so the new TSI program sort of reflects that as well. So while like I personally love if I could like take the DDOT org chart and move everything around myself, I don't actually work for the district government and I'm not in that position of power. But I am hopeful that like knowing what those like tracks of projects are basically like can help in the future. And that's been something where like if you've heard me testify for Juju Wash like anytime in the past like 2-ish years, I've talked a lot about like asking for more clarity in how projects are being selected and asking for them to line up with things. So seeing the high injury network and the Vision Zero update was a huge, like that was a really good thing. And I'm hoping that more things are going to be aligned to that. And then I think the next thing is to figure out like where the treatments are coming from and whom, like what team and when, and making that sort of like more publicly legible. And that's never like there's never going to be enough outreach on that, but that is something that I am like hopeful of, because right now like it is really hard to tell what the trade-offs are. It just is like the way that some of the projects that DDOT is executing that were planned like 5, 6, 7 years ago like don't have as much information about them in the way that we do about projects that have happened in the past like 1, 2, and 3 years. And it has made it easier to like understand what is happening. And I think the agency has shifted from a like, are we going to do it to like, we are going to do it and this is what it's going to look like. So it's not like the world's best answer. And again, like I don't work for DDOT, but like that I think has been something that was new to me that has made like it's made my job easier, but it's also like made my job harder because then we have like more stuff to put forth, but that's always a good thing. So can you also talk about the move of the Vision Zero office out of DDOT? What are the expected benefits and drawbacks?
Yeah, sure. So the decision was made to move Vision Zero out of DDOT specifically as an agency. So one, think of it like another family disciplining your kid. Like it's hard for one agency, even though we're the lead agency, to like tell MPD, oh, you need to do these more things, put them in your budget from within like an agency kind of structure. So raising us to the level of DMWA, that helps us work across the deputy mayor level and with those agencies within the cluster. So DMV, we can make their education efforts better. DPW, we can work with them on parking enforcement and raise profile of dangerous parking behaviors. What are the other ones? DOEE, environmental things that come up that may impact safety. And then there's more collaboration with MPD, with fire and EMS. So it's to sort of take us a little bit a step higher so we can better collaborate and coordinate across district agencies, because Vision Zero and Safe Systems is multidisciplinary. It always was supposed to be all hands on deck. It wasn't just supposed to be DDOT hand on deck, even though they have a lot of fingers in pots. So this helps us sort of be more collaborative. The drawbacks, I mean, it's been like 3 weeks since we made the move, maybe like 4 at this point. So I don't know if there have been many drawbacks so far. My like sort of work portfolio is pretty much still the same. I'm still reviewing people's projects, asking them to do more safety things. Yeah. I see Carla's question. Are we looking at how bus lanes are working in other cities from New York? Yes, absolutely. Yes, so we are constantly looking at infrastructure in other cities. So there's sort of a group that DC is part of called NACTO, the National Association of Transportation Officials, I think, or City Transportation Officials. So that's all kind of major cities and some smaller cities. And we all work together, share ideas in their special topic areas where we're constantly talking to our colleagues and troubleshooting specific issues. Bus lane enforcement being a critical one. So looking forward to our bus lane enforcement cameras that will help us keep the buses moving more efficiently. And when buses work more efficiently, then more people will want to ride them. And that means less people in cars and less crashes usually says, because buses and transit vehicles are the safest form of transportation in terms of the numbers. Other questions? Will there be restrictions? In terms of what? Bus lanes in like certain hours? So they will enforce whatever the restriction is on that street. So if there's supposed to be 24/7 bus lanes, it will enforce 24/7. If it's only a peak hour bus lane, they'll enforce, appropriately to what that facility is. So kind of like the speed cameras, some person, a DC official, I think it's going to be some kind of like either Metro Police, since it's a WMATA bus, they will be reviewing all the citations and then determining if a infraction was made or not. So a person will always review those before a ticket is issued.
And so just a lot of our bus lanes are not 24-hour bus lane only. They should be. I think they should be. Lacking that, then they're only restricted during the times that they're restricted, and the ability to restrict them is sort of contingent on, I guess, MPD leaving a ticket. Buses are about to be equipped with automated traffic enforcement to scan for tickets, but otherwise there's like no real consequence for parking or idling in a bus lane, and that sucks because DPW can't instantaneously show up and tow somebody's car. I think they should be. I think that's how things should work. They just currently don't work that way. So that is also frustrating, is that we can we can build bus lanes, but a lot of times due to opposition to them or a need to accommodate parking alongside more bus access, there is this trade-off of when it is a bus lane and when it is also parking and when it's a travel lane. And that means that those bus lanes are not 24-hour bus lanes and people driving them. So I think the on bus ticketing will make a difference. But if you sort of think through the consequences that you can impart upon drivers who are, blocking the bus lane, what is an immediate consequence that will get them to not do that again? There's not a great one, because even a ticket is not instantaneous. So But I do think there is a lot of like, definitely, Christine, you probably answered this, but there's a lot of sharing of like best practices from other cities, not just among like transportation agencies, but at least like in my job, I certainly talk to like people I know who are working on transportation and land use in other cities. And like a lot of that just goes back and forth. It's actually kind of a small world. And sometimes you end up knowing a little bit more about other cities than you ever thought you would. We have about 8 minutes left. Is there anything else we can sort of go into? I'm sorry, I had to deal with some neighbor stuff. I would just like to add also that the move for from Vision Zero from DDOT into DMWA, I think is a really good thing. DG Wash has advocated for that in the past. Partially because Vision Zero is, and I'm sure Christine explained this, is not solely transportation design and like construction. So there's a lot that goes into it, and having the VZ team be able to cross-cut against agencies from the like the executive agency is, I know we've talked a lot about the org chart, but is pretty meaningful, and I think has some value in getting those principles out of DDOT, where it was kind of treated as like, this is a transportation only thing, into something that is largely about operations and safety, which is kind of the point. So, is there an opportunity for DDOT to do small things like paint parking boxes?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are, so when we repave, I think, I'm not quite sure the scope of this, but we've been trying to get started a program where we look at all streets that are being repaved, and pick at least a couple of high priority ones, and do things like paint parking boxes, paint in and add flex posts to daylighting locations, and just sort of roll those out systematically across the district. Not necessarily changing things that are on the street, but just sort of like painting in what's already there or in the law. We've got the no parking within 25 feet of a crosswalk codified in DC law. So we roll those out across the district.
And can you explain what a daylighting space is?
Oh yeah, so there's a fun GIF on our website explaining it, but daylighting space is clearing parking out from an intersection or a crosswalk, so that people crossing are more visible to people driving and vice versa. And then also people driving can see around corners a little bit better, so they don't have to block crosswalks or bike lanes or things like that.
Crashes that don't result in injuries. Does anything in the Vision Zero network dashboard show high crash networks, not just high injury networks?
So Vision Zero is really focused and sort of necessarily needs to be it needs to be focused on crashes that are severe, fatal, and result in injuries. And with that data, that's the way that we determine what the priorities are in terms of locations, and then look at those locations and see what are the conditions and what other conditions are like that along other streets in the district, to determine risky conditions and areas. So the focus of Vision Zero is really ending fatalities and serious injuries. Crashes alone, we're humans, like operating in a transportation system. Humans make mistakes. That's one of the key tenets of a safe system. Humans make mistakes, but those mistakes shouldn't cost you your life or a limb. So that is our laser focus for Vision Zero. Now, when we do planning projects, we do consider all crashes, including property damage crashes as well. So just like fender benders, any kind of data point that we have. But if it is an injury or fatality, those are sort of by nature higher priority for Vision Zero, because really we want to get to eliminating fatalities and serious injuries. We know that crashes are always going to happen. Not that they're not traumatic. I'm a crash survivor. My son and my family have been in a crash before. So not that it's not important and not that it's not traumatic. It's just we have to sort of let the rising tide float all boats and improve safety across the board.
And this may be a sort of slight semantic difference, Rebecca. I'm just trying to get your wording right. Is like the high injury network, like in the Vision Zero update, is made up of corridors, right? Like it's not like it's not like this necessarily. It's like these are the high injury corridors, and together they are considered the high injury network. So the network is reflective of those corridors that have like these like large volume of reported crashes, right? So that's not going to capture all injuries, because the mechanism for this is still reported crashes, which is again not going to get things that are not reported, is not going to get, and this has vexed me for a long time, is how do you document the sort of shakiness of like a near miss, right? Like, is that something that like there's no mechanism by which you can report it, so therefore it doesn't get into planning, so therefore I think that's going to be imperfect until we come up with a better way to handle that. But for the most part, I think those are some semantic differences in how we're using the terminology here, that hopefully that answers your question.
But I will say, in the road safety audits that we do, we've done about 3 so far. We do hear about close calls that people have, and we do document in all of those comments. So if we can sort of get a focus on a street, then we are looking for those comments and things, because we know that not all unsafe situations are captured in the crash data. So we're trying to at least have a starting point of where to focus our efforts, and the highest priority areas to focus our efforts, and then go from there.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, barring more questions, I hope this was useful. I hope this is not the end of our conversation on this. Like I said, Juju Wash will continue to look for more forums. In the meantime, you know, I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to reach out to me, to Kelly, to Christine, if you have any questions. We'll do our best to answer them. And if you're not signed up for Juju Wash's emails, please do that. If you sign up for this, you'll be signed up for our emails. And you know, that's where we usually let you know when there's an opportunity to take action. A lot of times there isn't, in part because of the bureaucracy that we talked about today. But I have very much appreciated seeing a number of you showing up to council hearings and public meetings, and I hope that you'll continue to do that. Thanks so much, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.